Hi, my name is Emmanuel, and I'm a concept artist. I've been working for a while now, and I was contacted, what was it, a year and a half, close to a year
A
and a
little bit
half,
more than that.
a year and a half, 2 years ago by Jonathan, who will be interviewing here. Main thing for me is I wanted to share with you his journey because I think it's very important to see what it's like for a person really, you know, getting out of school, trying to find out, what concept art is, all the way to getting their first job. Uh, that was my prerequisite when I met John, was to really pay it forward and to help other people understand and make it easier for them to get a job. So here's Jonathan to tell you more about his journey.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and like Emmanuel said, I just graduated a year and a half ago with an illustration degree from FIT. Uh, and right now, I actually just got my first job as a concept artist at 2K Games. So I'll be talking a little bit about how I got there and everything that it kind of took to really build a proper portfolio for the game industry. And yeah, so right
So
now ArtStation is up. This is my page. Uh, this is not really the full portfolio that I used to get the job. This is just a sample. Um,
why don't we
and
start with like when did you want to do art and like all that?
right, so all the way from the beginning,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
I've
not like
always
when you were
when I
born.
was a baby.
Just when you really were starting to seriously thinking about doing art as a
Okay, okay.
profession. Yeah.
So I've always loved to draw. I never really knew very much about how exactly, the industry worked, especially concept art. I just knew that I liked to draw. And, usually it started out with video games that I liked, movies that I liked, stuff like that. Um, so I've always wanted to go to college for that, but I didn't really have any idea exactly what that meant. So basically, I saved up money for school and I applied to FIT, which is the Fashion Institute of
So
Technology in New
why
York.
FIT? I mean, that's my question to you always.
Okay. Well, the big thing is because it was the only place I could afford, honestly.
Fair
uh,
enough. Fair enough.
but also, I mean, I grew up in New York for a while, so it was gonna be someplace in New York, one of the schools in New York, and all the other schools are just,
Too
all art
expensive.
schools are really expensive.
Like Parsons, did you look into Parsons? Yeah.
Parsons, Pratt,
Any art school.
SVA, any art school is
Yeah.
always gonna be like 30,000 at least a year,
Mm-hmm.
and many people just end up in debt. And FIT it's a state college, so you basically pay a lot less.
Okay.
So that was the reason that I went there, and I studied illustration for 4 years.
Well, just before you go on there, I think a lot of people are not going to have a lot of money to go through pursue art school, and
Right.
I think an important thing, and this is part of why I respect John so much, is that he actually went through and worked while he studied and sort of made his own way through FIT, and I think that any kind of art school anywhere is you're gonna find something that's going to be able you're gonna be able to afford. It may not be the best school in the world, but you're gonna find something. I mean, what do you think about
Right.
that?
So I mean, like even if you don't have enough money to do a whole 4 years of school, you could take a class here or there. You could find somewhere near you where you can take classes. You can take online stuff. There are many options. I mean, I would say just you have to be smart about your money and how you're going to
Hmm.
budget. Because you can't just throw 40,000 a year and not know what you're going to get. You know. So I mean, I don't regret any of my time at FIT because I made a lot of friends and I learned a lot still, and it just kind of I would have never met Emmanuel. So
Well, what do you feel about actually being learning at school, in a school environment versus learning by yourself?
I think for me, I always knew what type of art I liked, but when I came to FIT, I didn't know that illustration over there would be like more editorial stuff and
Mm-hmm.
like fashion drawings and all these other things that I didn't really care about. you
Are you
know.
sure about that?
Yeah, first semester
Yeah.
we had like five fashion classes or something, and that was just a waste of time, to
And
be
I'm looking
honest,
at
for
Jonathan
me.
as he's, the way he's dressed. He's definitely not
Hey,
reflecting
I'm
any of
not
that
that
fashion.
bad. But no, but it's like, if there was an option to be more specialized and what you like, I would say go for that. But for me, it was like 4 years of just kind of going around and not really doing what I really wanted to do.
Hmm.
So I would say if you have the chance to really follow the kind of art that you want to do, you should just focus on that.
Hmm.
Because I kind of did too much dilly dallying about, and try to please professors all the time for every class to work in their style, and it's not really, it doesn't really work that way. You should.
So did you really know what concept art was when you were at school?
I knew what it was. I mean, I probably didn't know as much now, obviously, but I knew that it wasn't editorial illustration. I knew
Hmm.
that it wasn't like book illustration.
Hmm.
Um,
Did you have any aspirations like working in film or games or?
yeah, yeah. I've always, ever since watching Lord of the Rings, that was the big thing for me. So I mean, that's always kind of, I saw all these amazing drawings, and like John Howe and Alan Lee, and all these Lord of the Rings artists who designed this whole world, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So
He's making the chair creaking move
sorry,
closer.
sorry. Okay.
Uh, so talk us through like so you were at school and then how did that time go for in terms of for concept design?
So it was basically, I think, until like my last year where we had more freedom to choose what we wanted to focus on. Until then, it was basically nothing related to concept design at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Core classes and stuff.
yeah, I mean, there was anatomy, there's figure drawing, and some sculpture, a few like foundation courses, some digital painting, but it's not really
Mm-hmm.
kind of teaching you stuff like like perspective or design or anything like that really.
It's more
So
illustration based
yeah.
or well, actually fashion first and
Well,
foremost,
I
right?
mean that
But
was
it's an
only.
illustration major, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, fashion was only the first semester. Don't
Okay,
don't
okay,
get me
okay,
wrong.
okay.
um, so yeah, so my last year I had a mentor class, which basically meant that we had to find an artist that we liked and wanted to follow, and get an assignment from them. So I contacted you,
Mm-hmm.
among other people, and you were the one kind enough to respond. So
Mm-hmm. Well, did you talk them through it? I mean, did you send out a lot of
oh yeah, I sent
emails?
out
Did you?
like, I made like a whole bookmark folder of all these artists that I was gonna email, or whose contact information I could find. And I mean, it was at least like 20, 30, or something
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I got like maybe five responses. Everyone said either they didn't have time, or sorry, can't do it right
Mm-hmm.
now. And fortunately enough for me, I mean, you were available to give me
Did
some
anybody
time.
else say they were available?
No,
No.
no.
So here's just a quick tidbit on that is that if you're want to email people that you think are good that you would like to be mentored by or have someone look at your work, just remember they are really busy professionals, and in general I've found that even when I was coming up that people do want to help, but you have to really make it easy for people to help you. So a lot of times the lowest impact is you could send a painting and say, hey, can you give me just a couple words? It's easier than saying, can we talk on the phone, or can we like you make it as low impact as you can and build that relationship if you can. And the other thing is try not to mass email like I know I've gotten a lot of emails where the person is not even talking about you personally. They're just basically they just put your name, they paste your name on the dear blah blah blah, and then I get the email. I'm like, it's completely impersonal, and that they're sending it to everybody. So I'm already offended to begin with because I'm like, well,
Right. I mean, you have
yeah,
to put in the time to really,
right. I mean, if you look at an artist and you say, well, I really like your whatever it is, your designs, say what you like, and make it a priority that you want to talk to that person, and that gives that person a lot more chance to want to work with you as opposed to just hey, yeah, I like your
hey,
character
help me
work.
out whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, I like your character work, but I don't do characters. Like it's like what the hell. So just as a little sidebar. So all right, so you contacted me, and for me personally, at that time, I've been teaching on and off, doing directed study on and off. So I'm very by feel. So at that time, if I had time, and I did, I replied and I just said, okay, let's give it a shot.
Yeah,
So
we set up like once a week to Skype, and just kind of go over an assignment.
At like 1 in the morning.
Well, it was like 2 in the morning for me in New York, and it was like 10 here.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I was always like shot
yeah,
and just looked like I was about to fall asleep.
yes.
And I think like that's why you got the impression that I wasn't that serious.
Yeah, so just a quick thing on that is just you know, a lot of times I didn't know, what his life was. Aside from the 10 o'clock for me talking for half an hour, 40 minutes, I didn't really know that he had a million classes that he had to deal with, and that he had to work on top of that, and that it was 2 in the morning and he was super tired. A lot of those things I didn't really take into account because, well, I was busy myself. So, and Jonathan is not certainly not the one to really go dive deep into telling me every single problem. He just wanted to sort of had the feedback. So for me, I felt sometimes that he couldn't put in enough time into the director study, and I felt that it suffered.
Yeah, which I mean, it's kind of crazy because in my class, I think I was one of the few who actually got my mentor to talk to me every week. So,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so what should I talk about
Well,
next?
no, I mean, I think the important thing is like when you were going through that mentorship, how were you feeling? I
Right,
mean,
it was frustrating for me because a lot of things I was doing for the first time, and really like before then, I really didn't have the need to think about stuff conceptually, like how does something work, or why would I make this decision for the painting, like even small things like working in the right aspect ratio, that
mhm.
was completely new to me.
And that was your last term.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it's a big shock, and I've taught at multiple schools where I would teach last term students, and they really had no idea what was happening.
Hmm.
So that just goes to show that going to school isn't always the way. You can find out all this information even nowadays with so many videos.
I mean, do you think like at places like Art Center there wouldn't
Well,
be
no, our center is an exception
right,
because it's sort of the best school in the country.
especially for
But I
concept
mean,
art?
I've taught at other schools.
Hmm.
I live in San Francisco, so I've taught at Academy, and I can say that there are many classes or many last term students that need to know things that they don't know.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be the first guy that I've taught outside of the school.
Hmm.
So that's
So
it's the norm.
what are a few other things that students don't know about?
Well, I mean, it's simple. They'll be in a like say illustration, and they
Hmm.
won't have any idea of design,
Okay.
but they don't really understand concept design and what that means. They think, well, I can paint, so
Hmm.
I can, but they can illustrate, but it doesn't mean that they can design. And we'll
Right.
get into that as you see his portfolio. I mean, you're not just gonna see a dead screen that you're seeing, but we're just talking, and then until we'll bring up specific pieces of
Bring
work.
up some of
Yeah.
my old work too briefly, just to show you some progression.
Right. So I think why don't we just start with sort of early work, and then we'll get to the stuff that we were doing at FIT, and then we'll go through that
Okay.
and how you felt.
Yeah. So very briefly, we will go to my really really old work, which is from high school, which is back when I mostly just did copies of things.
Is that before like any kind of classes,
This is
anything?
before I never had any classes in high school for art at all. So it was all just self-taught, mostly I started off pencil and paper, that's all I had.
Okay.
You know, uh, drawing characters that I liked, Lord of the Rings, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
Trying to experiment with watercolor and stuff. But I didn't really have many options. Like I remember my first digital paintings were like with a mouse, like stuff like that.
And there was you had no formal
And I
training.
had no
So
formal
yeah.
training. I mean,
So
there were very few tutorials around. It was like conceptart.org was kind of there, but it was mostly just me copying a lot of stuff. Um, and yeah, and I mean, you can tell that there's not much
so
foundation here.
was there a portfolio you used to get into FIT, or
To
was
get
it?
into FIT, I don't remember exactly which pieces I used, but I know that it was a few of these pencil drawings. I think it was like this one we needed a still life. I think this was another one of those. And I mean, they're all really bad, old kind of.
Well, not bad. They just it's just
Right,
your
right.
beginning journey. It's fine.
So, I mean, I think I included some portraits, but it was mostly pencil drawings. And I think I had a few life drawing. I took like one or two life drawing sessions on my own in New York,
Mm.
uh, where I think the Art Students League, which they have, just like a free life, not a free life drawing session, like an $8 life drawing session once a week. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a few, like figure drawings and included that in my portfolio.
Cool. All right. So
Um,
then, now you're going through. So none of this is
so none of this,
FIT stuff,
no,
right?
no, this is
Okay.
all really old.
All right. So you want to go through
So
FIT stuff?
yeah, I continue here. These are various years in school. I think the earliest one here is maybe my second year, probably. I mean, it's terrible quality too, but
What is that? It's just like painting
this
of
was
a.
an acrylic painting. I mean, I had like an
Oh, I see.
opportunity to take a sci-fi fantasy class, which was like the only sci-fi fantasy
Uh-huh,
class
uh-huh.
that, was barely attended by any students, and I was so excited for that because it was the first time I got to,
To
you
do
know,
what you wanted to
to
do.
draw and paint stuff that I actually liked. So, I mean, that was a really early
Okay.
painting. Uh, some of these are from my last year when I first started talking to you. So, like, this is slightly better digital paintings.
Okay.
Uh, trying a few new things. I mean, they're still pretty bad, but
Oh, I remember that one.
yeah, you remember this one.
Yeah.
So you can tell that there's no design at all. I mean, it's just like I think I actually built this in SketchUp, and then completely destroyed it and ruined it painting over it. So those are some examples. This is like we had a lot of these kind of portrait classes where I don't even remember. I think this was like an album cover
Yeah, this is
assignment or something.
already an improvement.
And I think this was my last year, maybe my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of editorial stuff we had to do. Like things that vaguely represented something.
Mm.
Like this is like shitting on copyright, which you probably don't get.
I don't get the copyright part.
Yeah, a lot of figure drawing I enjoy. I still enjoy it. Like I don't really have time to do it anymore, but I think it's a fun way to practice painting sometimes. Yeah, some of these are pretty. I don't know.
Okay, that's disturbing.
That's Keith Richards.
I didn't see that.
You know Keith Richards?
I know Keith
Okay.
Richards. Yes.
Well, he's snorting his dad over there.
Okay. Yes,
Anyway,
yes,
anyway.
interesting. So when we got together, I think what was the first?
The
thing
first
we did?
assignment that you gave me was to design a radar base, a snowy radar base.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a final version of it back then, which
Right.
never really got far.
So okay, I'll preface it by saying when I looked at his work, I felt that okay, he has a background, he has started, and the thing with him is that he can really he can copy.
Mhm.
I would give him mask copies or just even concept artist copies, and he would copy it, no problem. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
And but the problem was that he never really quite analyzed each painting for what they were.
Yeah.
I don't know even have those copies, but but with the radar base, I wanted to see because when you come out to get a job as a concept artist, and now I think he has an understanding of what a concept artist really is, and I think it's good to explain actually.
One thing that it isn't is making pretty pictures.
Yes, it's well.
It can be that, but it's not,
can be that.
It's not only that.
You're gonna need to know how to do that. Using lighting to sell your design is very important.
Right.
But if you have no design, the best lighting is not going to help you anywhere. So concept design is really that. It's design. So a lot of times, if you have like this in this instance, if someone said to you, "Hey, we need a radar base," on some mountain, you're gonna have to think about it. And I gave him this assignment also to force him to use some 3D because at that time he didn't really use
Right.
any 3D.
I mean, it was me starting to use SketchUp for the first time.
Right.
So.
And I knew it was going to be difficult. But I don't think you were ready for how difficult it was
Right.
going to be because the design thinking wasn't there. And
It's hard to focus on a lot of different things at once when
Yeah.
you're struggling to learn software.
right.
So
And you were tired and you had a million classes.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought, well, this is not going well because doing it remotely difficult for me
Right.
because I'm a kind of guy that I like to show and tell and critique like on the spot, but it's very hard when you're Google Hangout. Connections usually crappy,
Yeah.
can't really see what you're doing, and you wouldn't have a lot to show each time. Sometimes
Hmm.
you would, sometimes you
Yeah.
wouldn't. You would put some
I
time
kind of
in,
I
but
treated it always as, like doing the bare minimum of homework that I had to do for the next week.
yeah.
That's kind of how I had to allocate my time. But I try to do a bit more on this sometimes, but it was really it
So
depended.
basically, this is the sort of the quality that I could get him to at the end of that
Right.
semester. So this is not a lot of work together. We haven't worked a lot, really. I mean,
Mm.
we talked weekly, but it wasn't that many
And you
times.
can't really understand, what you're talking about on the phone sometimes when I don't really have that foundation
Yeah.
before to understand what you're
Right.
talking about.
So
Yeah.
so we said, okay, fine, you've done the thing,
Hmm.
you know, just call it a day, and tell what
Well,
happened
do you,
now.
do you want to pick this apart right now, maybe?
Well, I mean, there's not so much. I mean, why don't you talk about it? I mean, you talk about where
Okay.
you think you can improve and what was hard for you.
Um, well, I think a lot of times it's kind of well, first of all, the design itself. We can talk about that.
Okay.
Um, we have this cantilever thing with three radar dishes, which I mean, initially I thought about different kinds of ways to make it cool, where maybe they turn around, or maybe the whole thing swivels, but obviously that's not practical. Um, just the whole thing of having this space on the top of a mountain would probably need better thought of how it would actually be built in there.
Right.
Like how does anyone get here at all? It's why are there different size radar dishes at the edge here? Um, just a lot of things like
So
that.
yeah, just so for me, I would say that I think you were starting to do a better job with the background,
Hmm.
integrating stuff. I think as a design though, you think about the problem. What is it,
Right.
right? And like you said, how do you get there? Well, there needs to be helicopter pads. There
Hmm.
need to be a lot of things.
And the
They
scale also is very vague here.
scale,
Like you can't tell at all what's
right?
really.
And
It
then
looks
all
huge, but then there's like really things that are off scale.
right. And then also, like the mountain itself is not
Hmm.
really in the right kind of perspective.
Right.
There is a perspective issue which is going to plague you. I mean,
It
you'll
still does.
see.
Still does.
And it's but we find ways to correct it, but
Hmm.
this is a problem because you look at the mountain and it's a problem. And compositionally, your eye doesn't really look where you need it to look.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But this is all intents and purposes, when we started, this is your real first concept design class.
Pretty much.
So, you're gonna be a beginner at it.
Hmm.
So, and this is not, to say, hey, what's wrong with Jonathan's work or anything. This is more to say, I know a lot of guys are in this position wondering, what do I do with my work? Because I've been on Level Up, I've been on all the Facebook sites, and I've seen a lot of people who are trying, but they're not quite sure where they need to go. And that's why we're doing this.
Hmm.
So just to help anybody who is in this position,
What kind of things do you really need to focus on?
right? So I mean, at this point, you're going, okay. So I'm done with school. This is my portfolio.
Hmm.
What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I wasn't thinking anything specific really. I just knew that
Well, you needed a
I
job,
needed a job.
right?
Obviously, I mean, I had some money saved up. Uh, I knew that I wanted to stick with it, and I just
Okay,
made that decision to stick with it. So I thought to myself, well, everything is on the West Coast. So let me just go there and see
okay,
what happens.
right,
And yeah, that was it. I got all my savings. I got on my motorcycle and I drove all the way from New York
okay.
to San Francisco. And
So
yeah,
well, you were stopping by San Francisco. I mean, basically for me, I mean, I was quite impressed by the fact that he would just jump on a motorcycle and say, "Fuck it, I'm going cross
that's not
country."
always the best idea.
Yeah,
By the way, you don't
yeah,
want to necessarily do
yeah.
that.
You don't want to know his in between, what happened, all
Yeah.
that stuff. But it for me as a mentor, I do respect the fact that he. I mean, it's not easy to uproot your life and just drive across country, leave all your friends, and go somewhere where you know
Hmm.
nobody.
Yeah, and I
And
literally didn't know anyone
right,
here except
and
for you, and
yeah,
we never met in
right.
person.
I mean, honestly, he was passing by San Francisco via probably going to
Hmm.
LA, not quite sure where he was going to end up. And, I think that also partly when I was mentoring him, I wasn't the most patient kind of guy. I'm the kind of guy that's pretty much going to tell you like it is. And I don't have a whole hell of a lot of patience to just be like babying you. I just don't do that. And
Patience is a problem of mine too.
yeah.
Maybe that's why we get along.
And then that's why I think he came here thinking just it was going to be a stop,
Yeah.
in San Francisco because he
And even back then, like I was sending out my work, I think, to all these different game studios, and well, just to everywhere basically, and
and
obviously
any
no
no
responses,
responses.
because
Okay.
I mean there's nothing really to show that I can do
Yeah,
the
I mean, go
work.
back to the radar. I mean, you could just
Yeah.
keep that up, like real quick.
Keep this up too,
Yeah,
anything like that.
yeah. I
He's not
mean,
gonna ever
it's
get you a
gonna
job.
right. It's hard because it's not you're not selling anything, and you're not. There's not only is there
Even
nothing.
this.
Yeah, not only is there nothing really to sell in there. It's just that the lighting, the composition,
Mhm.
it's not quite working to where it's making it look good.
Mhm.
So he gets here, and we have lunch, and I'm a kind of a vibe kind of guy, so I got a good vibe, and I said, this is a good guy, and a lot of things that you can't get over Google Hangouts. So I said, okay, you know what, why don't we just try to you stay in San Francisco for a little bit and come over, and we can sort of see if I can critique your work. And that was what, a year and
Yeah, that was a year and like
let's just say
three
a year
months.
and change, a year and change.
Hmm.
um
And at that point, this was still my level of work.
yeah, his level, yeah, that was his level of work. And we just said, okay, what do we need to do to get you to where
Hmm.
you need to go? Let's just, if we're going to begin, let's begin the schooling now,
Right.
basically. Whatever is in the past is in the past. It's built you up until now. So that's when we started. Why don't you talk about which piece you started with, what you thought you learned the
Well,
most.
there's some pieces that I can't really show here right now. But let's say, for example, uh, here are a few thumbnails of me starting to try to actually build things in 3D, and incorporate that in thumbnails that actually tell something, and set up a scene. And they're still not very good, obviously, but it was a step
But this
above.
was at the beginning,
Right, right.
so it wasn't going to be awesome. It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, of course.
yeah, it was going to be a slow process.
Hmm.
And the whole point of this is to see that process,
Yeah,
and how even now there's going to be times when you're struggling, but
all
it's
the time,
okay. Yeah,
every project. I mean, a lot of times you're not always going to be able to do stuff that's in your comfort zone. You're always going to have to learn something new on each
right.
project, so I designed this ship, and I started to learn 3D on my own, and it took a while to learn how to use Maya, and you helped me out a bit, but
Right.
it was a lot of me just kind of struggling through the software.
Yeah, I mean, I
you know
and that's the one part where I really I did appreciate your tenacity, because I'm not the kind of guy that's just going to hold your hand every day and teach you Maya. I'll
Hmm.
tell you what you need to know,
Yeah.
and you go find out, because that's just technical stuff.
Right.
And you did.
Hmm.
And you built this ship, which is, we talked a lot about the design of the ship, and you built
Right.
it.
Like right now, looking back, I wouldn't. I have this in my portfolio right now, but I wouldn't use this as a design because it's a little too derivative, and there are things that aren't really thought out about it. But I mean, it was a good start as a ship to actually go from thumbnailing, and I tried a lot of
So I
different
mean, I think
variations of
I think
stuff.
when you look at these thumbnails, you also see the ship. Here,
Hmm.
the proportions and all that. This was the early version.
Right, right.
Didn't
It
really work.
completely changed.
Right.
Completely changed.
But it
A lot
changed
of
for the better.
times. Yeah,
It changed for the better because you really started to think about it.
yeah.
So and then you learn how to try to do cut lines and
And well, the big thing about that also is always, just gather all the reference that you can for that, and really know what kind of aesthetic you want to follow. So, and eventually, I painted this scene, and I tried to put the ship in there, but ultimately I didn't use this because it just wasn't really where it should have been. It's the cut lines aren't figured out. A lot of, the lighting maybe is not figured out, the integration. And I mean, it was a good try, but a lot of times you'll
yeah,
have.
and this is actually not a bad painting at all, and it's
Mhm.
something that I think a lot of people would say, well, shit, I'm going to put it in my portfolio. But I think when we did portfolio time at the very end,
Yeah.
and you wanted to put it in, well, you kind of you weren't really
Well,
quite
I
sure.
wanted to work on it a bit
You
more.
wanted to work on it a little bit more, and I was like, well, it's just not ready right now
Yeah.
as it is. And for all you guys doing your portfolio, that you may be in love with that one piece,
Mhm.
but I'm telling you, if you put in it only takes one piece for
Right.
them to go, oh my god, okay, maybe not.
You really need to separate yourself from your work,
Right.
and just look at it very critically and say, is this not up to par? And if
Right.
it isn't, you just don't include it.
Exactly. So okay, so keep going.
Let's see.
So like, what was this right
Oh,
here?
this was another failed attempt. of that same ship, putting it in an environment. Uh,
Well, I'm
yeah,
not quite sure that it's a failed attempt. It was an attempt
right.
we
It was
just
one of
didn't
the
keep
attempts.
going.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it has a potential, but
yeah,
it
yeah.
you just never. You know.
Well, a lot of what we did was, I mean, you helped me out by, giving me projects that I could really work on, and a lot of that I had to really just struggle through every step. So, even things where I had to kind of model everything, and I went from stages like designing a bridge maybe, but ultimately I don't use this either. I just focus on one shot, which ended up being
So
just
tell them a little bit about this shot.
right. So this piece went through many different changes. It started off just as
Should show
like,
them your gate. Yeah.
oh, the
This.
okay, yeah, yeah. So I think this was just like a quick sketch actually of, I had a sketch in my sketchbook too of kind of a gate that I wanted to do for this
Mm-hmm,
piece,
mm-hmm.
and I just kind of did a photo bash painting, and this was like, okay, here's some kind of design, and I did a few variations of that too. So I mean, there's a couple different ones here, but whoops. Anyway, ultimately we decided, hey, you know what, this has potential. Why don't we actually build it and light it properly?
Yeah,
And
because I thought actually it was a pretty cool design sheet,
yeah,
and he really likes the fantasy stuff. So I thought, well, let's make a shot out of this.
yeah. So I mean, it goes from from a 3D render here, which I textured, and in that process, I'm learning how to texture. I'm learning how to use displacement maps. I'm learning how to do everything
Using the
basically
tools. Yeah,
using the tools,
yeah.
and it took time, but at the end, you have to go through all those stages to get to this piece ultimately, and
So what? So we're looking at this is the final piece.
yeah,
So we're looking at the final piece here, and there were so many struggles with this piece. Just like, was it daytime? Was it nighttime? Was it, what did you want to show?
yeah.
What
Is
was the
there like
story
an
behind
army
it?
going in, or is it
Right,
just one guy, or is it
right, right. And in the end, like, what did you walk away from this learning? I mean, I think this was this your breakthrough piece? I think this was your breakthrough piece.
maybe, I
One
don't
of
know,
them.
I guess.
Because I think from this piece on, everything just started getting better, really a lot better.
Okay.
But before this, I think it was a lot of struggles. And I
Yeah.
remember we would have a lot of really heated sort of, because you have to understand, I mean, he would come to my place daily and I would critique his work. And, you know, I mean, you're like any other artist, have your own opinion. And, I'm pretty, like in your face about stuff. So we would like be like, no, that's better. No, that's, remember even with that whole plein air speed painting.
Oh,
I mean, we
but
had a lot of times when we were arguing why. Remember, you were like,
yeah.
plein air, yeah, let's do some plein air painting, digital. And I'm like, no, that's stupid. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but we always kind of still have those debates.
Yeah,
I
and
think, to
it's
some degree.
yeah, but while we're on that, just really quickly, it's like I'm a person that doesn't. I think speed painting is great for somebody who's seasoned, who's trying to show, trying to find different styles, and they already have a design
Mhm.
vocabulary in their head. They can already come up with
And
those
it's
shapes.
just a fun way to relax for them.
Yeah,
Because
or no, you can even do it for clients because you already have the
right.
design shapes in your head.
But for clients, it's going to be more, I think, like, like you're doing quick thumbs for them. You can call it a speed painting, but
Yeah.
it really has some thought
So
behind
yeah,
it.
it does, and but that's to to them that's a speed painting. But
Yeah.
for the guy who's just starting out, it's a crutch.
Mhm.
It's not. Oh, I'm just gonna go really loose.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna hope I hit
I
something.
mean, I can show you also. I think the summer right after I graduated, I actually did a speed painting every day for like the whole summer. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
no, I think I showed you
Did
some
you
of
show me?
them, but a lot of them are just, you can see that my level hasn't really gotten much farther from each one, and that's because I'm just focusing on, oh, let me just be fast and let me just have fun. And I'm not really learning, so some of these are copies, some of these were just kind of studies of, frame studies. But at this point, I mean, my level wasn't really, I wasn't benefiting as much as I should have from these speed paintings.
I know for sure that
know?
when you were copying the pieces that I told you to copy and he can copy.
Right.
It's not a problem. It's just that he wasn't really analyzing. So then his skill wasn't getting better. So you're just copying, but
I mean,
you don't
your,
get better.
your painting skill might get better to some degree.
Oh yeah, technical skill
Yeah.
will get better.
Yeah, but even then, it's like there's still things that you kind of don't see at that you really need someone to tell you that it's not working because this is
Right.
off and that is off.
And so,
You know.
go back to your gate piece. So, um, so on this piece, like, I would say, well, it's always thumbnail, right?
Hmm.
Thumbnail and idea.
Right.
And then we figure out, well, does it need 3D?
Yeah.
Does it not need 3D? Having 3D helps. I mean, certainly this one, I think,
Oh yeah,
is
sure.
not absolutely necessary. It's a simple perspective, but,
It helped a lot for lighting. It helped a lot for. I mean, it just honestly, it was just fun building this. Um,
but I would say also it's nothing wrong with using 3D. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that says, you know what, if you come out with a good image at the end, I don't give a shit
use
how
whatever
you
tools
did
you
it.
need.
The thing is, you understand perspective as a theory. The
Hmm.
problem is you don't really use it in your drawing, and you still
Yeah.
have that problem. But you say, well, you know what, I'm going to use this as a tool to help me
Because I know what
right.
I
I
need
mean,
help with.
if you're drawing perspective lines in 2D, that doesn't make you any better as long as you can do it in some way to do the right perspective.
Yeah.
It's just that, your crutch is that you need the 3D program,
Hmm.
and the artist can use a pen and paper and do it anywhere. So, hey, if as long as you have your program, gives a shit.
If you really want to waste all that time and just be the best at perspective and just do perspective drawings every day, I mean,
You can do
a
that too,
choice,
yeah.
but
And
it's going to take a lot longer.
yeah, and you need to know what your weakness is, right? So your weakness is perspective. A lot of people say, well, go learn perspective. I say go learn design.
Yeah.
I say you can draw all the best perspective and have no content, and it really, I'd say learn everything if you can. But I mean, this is not a perfect world. This is not going to be like that. So on this one, we had an army.
Yeah.
We had a dragon at some point, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we had lots of different things.
So we had this army that we never, like, this wasn't finished,
right?
And then we were like, oh man, it's just something not quite right about it. It's just, and the colors weren't really happening, and so
some perspective issues,
right? So we took a lot of different roads before you decided, what, simpler is better, and he's a big Lord of the Rings guy, so he wants to show this in the best light possible. So for me, I think this was his breakout piece because he really started seeing the light. He started feeling the lighting, not being
metaphorically.
Yeah, I mean, but you really did start
Yeah.
understanding how the light works.
Yeah.
Like how it's lighting up air, and things like that. And that's a technique. And then you really went in and designed the gate. You went in there and said, okay, how am I going to use the Elven, was it Elven?
Yeah.
The language, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put it? Will they have handrails and guardrails? No.
Nothing
yes.
in Middle Earth has handrails.
So that's but those are decisions you
Right,
made, right? I mean, it's not it's not by chance. I mean, I want people to understand that everything in here is because you made that decision, and you made that decision.
Nothing is arbitrary.
So that leads me to my other thing, which is the thing that I always harp on you, which is reference, right? So why don't you talk a little bit? Because I think that's going to help people.
Sure. I mean, I always, I get impatient, and, sometimes I'll look for reference, and, it'll be like 20 minutes and I think I'm done. And, I might not end up with the right reference or good quality reference or anything at all, really. So, and a lot of times, even when you do have good reference, you're looking at the reference, but you're not really looking at it. You're not analyzing it. You're not, taking the right things from it. And it's really...
Bring up the sunset piece. That's
Which one?
Let me see your portfolio thing again.
Anyone see the art station?
That piece. Bring out that folder with that stuff in there. So for me, my quick blurb on reference is just nobody. I mean, unless you've painted it a million times, I don't think anybody can just paint it without looking at anything. All the great masters use reference.
Even the ones that have drawn from their head, they've drawn from something.
Yeah, they've done it
that.
so many times that they go, I get how to do that, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, so just leave it up. So the reference part of it is you can't stop after you think, well, I just have one little 300 pixel picture. Then that's good enough. No, I mean, you have to understand, you're doing a sunset. Well, how does the light hit the rock,
Hmm.
and what value does it have, right? So that's one part of the reference, right?
Yeah.
That's reference for like lighting and painting technique and all that kind of stuff. It's there. Why not use it? But people don't look enough for it, so then they paint it and they go, oh, it doesn't look quite right. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is design reference. So if you're going to design a city and you need a certain architecture, you need to find the right architecture. And you can't just cross architecture arbitrarily without thinking of how lines flow and all that. So you need to delve yourself into the world of the architecture.
That's something that I'm still learning because I don't really have much of a background for that kind of thing. And the more you know about different cultures and different subjects, the more you'll kind of have that visual library in your head. So it's really, you can't stop learning ever, really. You just have to keep gathering
But just
more
make sure,
imagery and
and I'll just say, every time I came out here and I said to him, "Where's your reference?" he would get this look from my face of
sometimes I'd have it
disgust
up.
because I was like, "What the fuck is this, man?" It's like he had like 10 images, and I'd be like, "What? Are you kidding me?"
Get
And
out.
yeah, and I'd be like, "More reference," and I would leave because I'd be like, "That's just you're wasting your own time. You're
Yeah.
not being efficient." So if you look here, this painting is basically it was inspired by Hudson painters, right? You
Right. I
wanted to
think Thomas Cole painting. One
so
of those Hudson River painters.
right. So you wanted to do that, and you made this thing when you were back on break,
Hmm.
and you had this composition. I thought, oh, it was a cool painting. But the problem is, and if you look at the rock on the sort of the left side,
Mhm.
next to the waterfall, is that he couldn't get it right.
Yeah.
He couldn't get it right. He would paint it, and I'd say, no, that's not right. He would paint it, I'd say, no, it's not right, and he was getting pissed. But you weren't getting it right, and
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to look at your reference, but you never did. Because he just went. You just started painting.
I was
right?
looking at it, but I wasn't looking at it.
Exactly. That's the problem. So then I just said, look at your reference.
Hmm.
If you want to paint the rock, look at the rock, and it's right there. All the value, all the stuff. Analyze and understand. Don't just copy. Analyze and understand. Analyze and understand. Because if you analyze and understand, you will use it forever. And that's a thinking that gets you through all your art stuff. You will solve every problem if you analyze and understand what you're doing. So of course, after much, like unhappiness, he did that, and then he got it. It's there. It's just that you have to really enlist the help of things that have already come before you. Don't reinvent the wheel, because
Yeah.
and all this time he's got the pressure of, well, I need to get a job.
Getting a job and
know?
and
I mean, tell them. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. That it's hard times.
oh
at
yeah,
that time,
I mean until like very very recently it was still hard times. Living in a small room, that I could barely afford.
the
I had to
curtain
get
room.
yeah, well, I'm still there right now.
So he's in a curtain room with no walls, basically, and it's not. It's probably not a very easy living environment, but you make do because
Yeah,
you
I
want
mean,
to be in what you love.
you have to
right?
make sacrifices sometimes
Right.
to get to where you need to be. So I mean, for a couple months I had to get a job at the YMCA to pay the bills, and I did that part time, and it helped for a while, but ultimately I said to myself, you know what, I need to just focus more on the art so that I can get the job that I really want
Yeah,
faster.
exactly. And that's
You know,
the right way to think. So, for those of you out there who are, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in that situation, either in their own apartments, in their in their parents' place or whatever, and wondering if they ever are going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think Jonathan's is, he's had it as hard as anybody could have had it, because you really had no help.
yeah,
But I think that the tenacity is going to pay off. So now his portfolio, as you can see, the work is already getting better, much better than it ever. I mean, from the stuff you saw at FIT, I mean, it's definitely already has.
and that's a year and a half,
Right.
less than a year and a half.
Yeah, it's got a maturity to it, and so he went in and started revamping stuff, like that headless horseman piece. Why don't you show where it
The older
was?
version?
Yeah, and then I mean, what it wasn't bad, and that's why I think we started doing it, because it had such potential.
Had some potential.
Well, I mean, I enjoyed the piece, and I thought it had potential. So here's the piece as it was, and I thought, oh, it's still, looking at it now, it's still not bad. It's just a different mood. But I think you took all the stuff that you learned, and you sort of put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And we should start saying this, that there was a time when, I think maybe 9 months ago, when I said, hey, why don't you try photo collaging stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the hardest time.
Yeah.
Because you thought it was going to be easy. Why don't you talk a little
It's
bit about that?
Well, I mean, anyone can try to photo bash, I think, but it's getting it to photo bash right is what's really hard. And you have to really be aware of value and even, color, which just matching colors sometimes can be a real challenge. And some people just skip over that. They'll just, oh, whatever, just paint over it and it's good. But it's not that simple.
Yeah, because a lot of times I would come in and go, hey, do you see that piece has got a little
Yeah,
magenta?
and I
And you'd be
wouldn't
like,
see it.
ah, crap.
Sometimes I wouldn't even see it.
Yeah.
It's like you have to really train your eye to see that.
Yeah. So this piece is, I think it's good, but I think he took it to like a much more sort of a nowadays kind of like more with more photo texture, and you can flip back and forth. I mean, it's already up on your.
Yeah.
So now it's really got that snowy mood. It's got a real mood to it. It's got the horse looks better. Everything just looks better to me, and I think it's definitely grown a lot. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, just getting more comfortable doing that, I think, was a process for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially coming
blending
from
in
illustration.
those photos down there, and painting it over it and all that. People think it's the easiest thing to do. It's not. It
Yeah.
really isn't. I mean, it's not easy
A
at
lot of
all.
times you see photo bashes, which, they might pass as a quick sketch for work sometimes even, just to show an idea, but they're not really quite seamless. And I think that's what you really should be aiming for,
Yeah, I mean, you don't want them to be recognized. That's a
Yeah.
piece of a.
Yeah. I mean, even if you have mostly photos, it should look like it's all one thing.
So now I think you can just. Why don't you talk about this piece a little bit? Because this piece, man, did that have more problems too?
Yeah, I mean they were all a challenge each time, and I was working on this until this is actually not very old, so I
Just
had
right
this.
before CTN. Right?
Yeah. So I had this one thumbnail that I liked and decided to make it into a painting, and I was trying to really get this feel of an unstable kind of planet with rocks just kind of floating up, and it just wasn't working. Like the lighting wasn't working, the rock shapes weren't working. A lot of it just was not really getting there, and ultimately I just had to keep pushing and keep working the shapes and keep working the lighting, and then eventually it came together. So
Well, it came together also, sort of the night before you were supposed to leave
Yeah,
for
yeah.
CTN. But it came together because, it's like you overcomplicating things, like if you're, and this is, we're still talking about that today. When you're putting anything in an environment, like say with atmosphere and haze and all that, you have to understand that things that are further away lose detail,
Right.
because at that time it was everything had detail.
Getting the
and-
sensitivity to do that is like a whole class, I think.
Well, I mean, it's for a lot of people, it's a lifelong thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I'm still, for me
Yeah, I mean-
personally, I have a lot of reference going. All right, I want this kind of a day. I want to look at that reference and make sure I honor that and I understand that and I learn new things every time.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 10 years plus, so it's you're always gonna learn.
And I'm just starting out, so it's every new piece I'm still gonna have those challenges, but you just have to approach it the same way and really learn and analyze what you're looking at. And
Right, and that's part of design thinking. It's just kind of learn, analyze, understand. But design can be a lot of things. It could be a shot design, the composition design, the lighting design,
yeah,
the shape design, and then there could be the actual functional, like hard surface
Right.
design,
It's more technical
architectural
stuff.
design. Right, so there's a lot of things
Yeah.
that like you haven't gone down that road yet.
to
but
kind of sum it up, it's like concept design is really just about thinking.
yeah, okay,
It's all about thinking.
So at this point, he's going, well, I need to get a job. So he's prepping his portfolio to go to CTN, which is, well, what?
Oh, CTN is just what does it stand for?
I don't know.
Creative Talent Network. I
Yeah,
think.
so he's just going down to LA and he's making that trip down there to show his portfolio.
I just went to kind of get a feel for what people might tell me.
Stop creaking that chair.
I'm not doing it on purpose.
See, that's how we talk. But this is basically at the point where we were talking. Okay, portfolio time.
Mhm.
You're ready.
At least I thought I was
yeah.
kind of getting ready.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, basically, you haven't done a whole lot more pieces after that.
Yeah.
But we were like, okay, you're ready to do it. So we talked about, like taking off your old art, off of
Right.
the
Right.
internet and make sure you start fresh, and whatever you put up needs to sell you.
Yeah.
And you can talk
I
about
mean,
that.
that's why, right now I'm way more selective than I used to be with what I post online. And, I learned that's one of the big things that I learned from you. Um, so really, I mean, when I showed my work, I really just made sure that it was only the pieces that I really thought were the best that I could show. And, I have a lot of things that are sitting on my hard drive that, some people might think, oh, hey, let me post that. But, it's really, I
Yeah,
don't need
because
to.
no, definitely not. I mean, because if you do, you run the risk of people looking at it and going, "Oh my God, what is that?"
Yeah.
And then you might have 10 good pieces and one piece that's questionable, and people will inadvertently look at that and go,
All it takes is one
"Oh,
piece. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe, yeah, let's just
Yeah.
look at more portfolios." But if
Hmm.
you have them wanting more, that's what you want. Because if they say, well, hey, you have a lot of good stuff, but do you have maybe one with a car in it, that you designed a
And if they
car?
ask for that, then
then you
that's
can
when you.
then you can either do a new piece really quickly, or give them something that is questionable, but at least they're asking for it. You have something to give.
Yeah.
But if you put it in and they don't want that and they think that's horrible, then you got a problem. It's
Yeah.
just being smart, because you're a lot of times you're going to learn on the job.
Hmm.
And this is going to be Jonathan's first job, as a concept artist, and
First official job.
yeah, first official job. I mean, because he helped me out, but
And I've done some
yeah,
horrible unpaid work
yeah,
occasionally.
yeah, and definitely not the way to go. So let's
Yeah.
just preface unpaid
Let's
work.
just not even talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's for another conversation. Is there any other pieces you want to talk about that you have something to say?
I mean, I guess I could talk a little bit about this one. This was one where I think I used the most kind of photo bash. Really use everything that I've learned, into one, combining everything that I learned into one piece.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of photo bashing. There's 3D even, for the barrels over there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's painting, obviously, and ultimately I got contacted to do a tutorial about this, so I think
Okay.
it worked out.
Well, you want to just show real quick what was in that tutorial,
Yeah.
because that's the best breakdown you have
Yeah,
on
yeah.
their stuff. So
Just- So I mean, I don't have all the writing here because that's in 2D Artist magazine, but I can show the steps from black and white sketch. So I mean, even this, I started off finding a photo that I really liked. I like the lighting in it. I like the environment, and I knew I wanted to do something with soldiers. So this, something abandoned, something a little post-apocalyptic. So that was the first black and white, and that's just to establish the values, obviously. Then different variations of a little bit change of layout, maybe different figures, all that. Then starting to lay in texture, and that's really just gathering a lot of photo textures, and I mean like everything you can find that might relate to this subject.
right.
Just gather everything.
And we still went through that whole reference problem, because you
Yeah.
would have, what the amount would be, you would have 10% of what I thought you should have,
Yeah.
and it
Always
was,
gather more than you think you need.
yeah, because
So,
you might find that one that really fits in there and that helps you
mhm.
out.
Yeah, and then it's just more laying in, perspective. Uh, yeah, starting to paint a bit.
But also, don't forget that we're also looking at this in terms of, like, people might look at it and go, well, it's just photos and all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
at the same time, we're looking at structure, design. Like when you look at it, like,
It has to feel homogenous.
yeah, and it has to feel like it's really inside of a plane. You're really making it out of nothing.
Yeah.
So, that is also a kind of design.
Right. And even just, to set it up properly, I don't have it here in these steps, but there's, a plain fuselage in 3D that I had just to place figures in there to see that the perspective is right,
Mhm.
and all that. So adding some more atmosphere and those 3D barrels over there. Which normally you wouldn't really have to do that step because I actually modeled and textured it, which you don't really need to do. But it was a nice little side journey.
Yeah, but I also think that for you, that's the more obvious step, because I think in perspective, that is not the easiest thing
It's
to
not.
do.
It might seem like it is, but it's not.
I mean, you can plot it if you had to, but
Mhm.
uh, I think if you had the scene in 3D, why not?
Yeah. Some lighting, detail, and putting in characters. Those were just for the magazine, but that's the final right there.
Cool.
So yeah.
So then at this point I'm saying he's ready. He's ready for to go and really look for a job. And I think after this was Sunspear, and then that's it, right? I mean,
well, yeah. Aside from stuff that I worked with you. Oh, there was this.
No,
one
I
too.
mean that
Yeah,
that
was just like a quick.
that was just
one.
for fun. Basically,
Yeah.
at that point, you're already good to go. So this is a I mean I really like this one because this is where we actually talk a lot. I mean, he understood the story in the Game of Thrones on the spot, Sunspear, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so he understands.
Fantasy nerd right here.
Right. So yeah, definitely nerd. So the thing is, we talked a lot about what this place would be.
Yeah.
And how to show it. How to design a city that looks like a city, and to have the tiers that it needed to have,
Mhm.
have that boat shaped thing you were talking about, and also have how to make it like seem like Sunspear, but not be like this really hokey looking thing.
Yeah.
So
something that they might actually use for Game of Thrones.
Exactly. So this is what I would call design.
Mhm.
But you are looking at a lot of different architecture to get a feel of it, because you're going, I kind of want it to feel this way.
Yeah.
Like what
Well,
was
it was like Spanish, kind of a little bit of what's it called?
Well, let's just say Spanish architecture, in a certain time period.
Yeah, yeah.
Now the thing is, you looked at
A
all
little bit
that,
Romanesque.
so you look at all that reference, and then you decide what's going to flow, to
what's
make
gonna
it
fit in the best.
right, and what's going to make a new architecture,
Mhm.
right? Because you're using a lot of, if you just use Romanesque or Gothic or something, it's going to look Gothic or
Yeah.
Romanesque. But if you use different things, but they need to work with each other,
Mhm.
because if you put something that completely works against each other, like maybe you put a Roman column in a Japanese temple, might feel really weird, or it might be awesome. But the thing is, you have to decide.
Well, you have to make those decisions and try out and see what works.
Right. So, but really think, really design, really gather reference, and study. Right. So
Yeah.
this is that took a little time.
Yeah.
And then
I struggled a lot with the foreground,
Yeah.
and getting it to really flow towards our focal point over there, and it went through a lot of variations, just like a lot of other pieces that I've worked.
put the right lighting in. But
Right.
now when you look at this piece and you look at the radar, it's like two different people.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just a lot of maturity that you've gained in really pretty much in a year, I would say, because you didn't work consistently. I mean, you went to Europe,
Yeah. Well,
you did,
that was a little.
So I mean, but that to to this is to me, that's as much of a leap as you can ever have. So now you're
Of
ready.
course, I'm still learning. And,
Of course, we're all learning, right? So now you're looking for jobs. Tell us what did you do? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, after I got my portfolio looked at CTN a bit, I just applied to, I think it was like 6 different studios, and I didn't really have too high expectations, but I got 2 responses saying that oh, we're full right now or nothing available, and then 2K Games actually got back to me and scheduled an interview, and yeah, and once the first interview went well over the phone, they invited me in for the second one, and saw my work again, talked a bit about what they needed, and and what I could give them, and yeah. And
so what do you think helped you at that interview, and or just even in your portfolio, what do you think they liked?
I think
I mean, you're talking about sketchbook, so you can say
right. Well, they did ask me more for my process, which I did show them that airplane piece and the steps to that, but then I also showed them my sketchbook, which luckily I had on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really like to see the thought behind all the finished pieces, where you have all these, maybe they're rough pen drawings, but you're writing ideas next to them, you're thinking about how to solve a problem, and just for them to see that you actually do think before you do a piece. And I think that made a big difference, honestly, because the pieces that I showed
for them,
yeah, for sure, the pieces that I showed are it's pretty much what you see is what you get over there, but how do they know that I can actually think about something, you know.
Right.
So I think that really helped a lot, showing my sketchbook, and yeah, and just talking in a way. Anytime a game studio is gonna talk to you about the work that they need, it's not just gonna be, do a scene like this, like the city. It might be some technical stuff. It might be paint overs of some 3D model that they have. It might be adding a bit of mood. It might be putting in some architecture that they need from a certain time period.
Or
And
designing this fish tank for
or
this
designing,
guy's
yeah, designing a
room.
garbage can.
Yeah.
They have to know that you understand these things.
Yeah, and it's the thinking and the understanding of design that's always going to get you to. If you know how to design something, the process, you'll be able to design anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is because you can just research it.
You gather the right reference, you research the subject, and you put it together.
Yeah, and so technically they look at Jonathan's portfolio and they understand that technically he can paint it, he can get it to look good. So we don't, that's why they said, well, let's bring him in.
Yeah.
And then then you in the interview they want to see, well, do you even think?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think? And does it jive? And a lot of times in the interview, they want to see that you're not a freak.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, they want to know they can work with you.
Yeah, that you're a fun person to work with other people.
Right. I mean, you're not gonna run around with your pants off and screaming or something. You're not gonna
maybe on Friday.
Yeah. No pants Friday. But so yeah, I mean, that's.
And that might be a thing, for many artists. Maybe a studio job is not right for you. Maybe you don't like working with other people all the time. It really depends, I think. For me, I'm fine working with other people every day,
I mean, you want it.
I want to.
The thing is, I talked to. I think you really wanted to find a studio job.
Yeah.
Why?
I think, just in general, I think it's a great way to start a career because you're exposed to so many different artists and different techniques and different ways of working. And I mean, there's also pressure, obviously, but you also get to work on all these amazing projects, which you can't really beat that, honestly. And once eventually, probably one day I'll tire of that maybe and go freelance. But until then, I think it's way more important to really get
I mean, I really have I'm a big proponent of, if you're starting out to work, to go somewhere to work, no matter where. Because you'll always learn something from your fellow artists. You always learn something from your art director. You'll be required to do things at a certain time, and you'll be good tasks and bad tasks, and there's just when you're at home,
it's easy to wallow, and like you're by yourself and no one's really pushing you, and you can just kind of be lazy sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
we've been through those days, when you felt really bad. You want to talk about that briefly?
Well, I mean,
because I remember those days where you're like, I don't.
I had off days where I just like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I can't keep doing this and not getting anywhere. And it's really depressing, especially when you don't have.
When are you gonna get a job? I want to get out of this curtain place.
Right. And it's like, got to pay the rent, got to pay all these bills. Got to make sure you have enough food to eat next month.
Right.
It's not easy. I mean, it's a real struggle, but you just have to stick with it. And I think. I mean, that's also another reason why I prefer a little bit of the security of working in a studio.
Mm-hmm. Especially at the beginning. Especially at the beginning. I mean, I say that if you can work at least a year in studio, at least, so that because for me, like I worked 10 years in studio, and but that's where I met all the best guys, I mean, the guys that I frequently go back to now and ask for advice or critique or something, is people that you can't meet people on freelance,
or on Facebook.
It's not really meeting, and when you work on a project together, even if it's for a week, there's a bond that you create. So it's really advisable to do that, and like you did, you went and moved. Like for those of you who are somewhere, you say, well, I mean, there's no studios here, move. I know that might sound really harsh and not doable, but if you want to be in the career, you have to do it.
Just got to find a way.
You're gonna find a way, and this guy found a way. Rode his bike across country, with no plan in mind. I mean, that drives me insane. I couldn't do that, but you did, and now, you're basically tomorrow is your first day.
Oh yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow is his first day at 2K, and this is the portfolio that took to do it. And
there are a few pieces that I haven't included here because I can't really show them.
Yeah. So the thing is, we're gonna sort of come back to this in a couple months just to sort of recap a little bit. Now that he's worked a while at the studio, what's changed.
Hmm.
Or what has prepared him best, to do his job, because you're going to the job tomorrow not knowing what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You
Well, I'm
just
gonna
know.
fill out a lot of paperwork,
Right? But I mean, you don't know what concept artist
yeah,
there is really going
or
to
what
be.
exactly they need.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting for the part two of this. But right, is there anything more you want to say?
Um, no, not really. Just anyone who's working on their portfolio and just getting better as an artist, just keep going.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
feel free to follow him on Facebook too, just to see his updates and what he's up to.
hopefully not too
Yeah,
sporadic.
Jonathan Guzi, you can see his name there. Anyway, so we'll try to do it a part two. When we feel like it's appropriate time. If we have really.
Sure.
um, but anyway, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. But I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Bye.